History is often taught as a chain of causes and effects, dates and decisions, wars and discoveries. But buried beneath timelines and textbooks are moments so bizarre, statistically impossible, that they feel less like history and more like fiction. These are moments when reality bends, when strangers share impossible connections, when the past echoes itself with chilling accuracy. Coincidences that defy logic. Events so strange that even historians pause before accepting them as fact. Tonight, we re-diving into the most bizarre historical coincidences ever recorded, freak occurrences that seem too strange to be true. Let us begin with one of the most famous and unsettling coincidences in history, one that connects two American presidents separated by decades, yet mysteriously linked in death. Abraham Lincoln was elected President of the United States in 1860, exactly 100 years later. In 1960, John F. Kennedy was elected president. That alone might seem like a harmless coincidence, but it doesn't stop there. Lincoln was assassinated on a Friday, shot in the head, while seated beside his wife. Kennedy was also assassinated on a Friday, shot in the head, while seated beside his wife. Lincoln was assassinated in Ford's Theater. Kennedy was shot while riding in a Lincoln automobile manufactured by Ford. Lincoln's successor was Andrew Johnson, born in 1808. Kennedy's successor was Lyndon B. Johnson, was born in 1908, exactly 100 years apart. Lincoln had a secretary named Kennedy who warned him not to go to the theater. Kennedy had a secretary named Lincoln who warned him not to go to Dallas. Lincoln's assassin, John Wilkes Booth, was born in 1839. Kennedy's assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald, was born in 1939. Booth fled from a theater and was caught in a warehouse. Oswald fled from a warehouse and was caught in a theater. Both assassins were killed before standing trial. Each parallel alone might be brushed off, but together they form one of the most spine-chilling patterns in recorded history. Now let us cross the ocean to a tragedy at sea, one that seems like a prophecy written decades before disaster struck. In 1898, author Morgan Robertson published a novel titled Futility, or The Wreck of the Titan. The book described a massive, unsinkable luxury ship named the Titan that struck an iceberg in the North Atlantic and sank due to insufficient lifeboats. 14 years later, in 1912, the RMS Titanic, considered as an unsinkable, hit an iceberg in the same region of the Atlantic and sank under nearly identical circumstances. The Titan and the Titanic were similar in size, speed, and passenger capacity. Both ships were traveling in April. Both struck icebergs at night. Both lacked enough lifeboats. The similarities were so precise that after the Titanic disaster, Robertson's book was pulled from shelves, as people were convinced it was not fiction, but a premonition. Some coincidences don't predict tragedy, they follow people through life in strange, looping ways. Take the story of Italian King Umberto I in 1900. The king went to dine at a small restaurant in Monza. Upon meeting the restaurant owner, the king was stunned. The man looked exactly like him. As they spoke, they discovered they were born on the same day, in the same town, and had married women with the same name. Even more bizarre, the restaurant had opened on the same day the king was crowned. The next day, the king learned the restaurant owner had died in a shooting. Later that same day, King Umberto I was assassinated in an eerily similar manner. Two identical lives, ending almost simultaneously. Sometimes coincidences follow objects instead of people. In the late 19th century, a man named Henry Zegland broke up with his girlfriend. Distraught, she took her own life, and her brother, seeking revenge, shot Zegland. The bullet missed his heart, grazed his face, and lodged itself in a tree. Years later, Zegland decided to remove that tree using dynamite. When the explosion went off, the bullet embedded in the wood was launched into the air and struck Zegland in the head, killing him instantly. A bullet fired years earlier came back to finish the job. An outcome so improbable it sounds like folklore, yet is documented in historical records. Some coincidences seem to stretch across time, binding strangers in unsettling ways. In the 1970s, an Ohio man named Robert Fallon stepped out of a taxi wearing an expensive suit and was shot dead by a passerby who assumed Fallon was a mob boss. When police investigated, they found Fallon had only loose change on him. He searched for his wallet and discovered it belonged to another man named Robert Fallon, who lived miles away and had lost it years earlier. The wallet somehow ended up in the hands of a man with the exact same name, leading to his fatal misidentification. Then there are coincidences so absurd they seem deliberately staged by the universe. In 1975, a man in Bermuda was riding a moped when he was struck and killed by a taxi. Exactly 1 year later, his brother was riding the same moped on the same road and was killed by the same taxi, driven by the same driver, carrying the same passenger. Statistically, the odds of this happening are nearly impossible, yet it occurred exactly as reported. History also has a strange habit of repeating itself with eerie precision. Napoleon Bonaparte and Adolf Hitler shared an unsettling number of parallels. Napoleon rose to power in 1804. Hitler rose to power in 1933, to 129 years apart. Napoleon invaded Russia in 1812. Hitler invaded Russia in 1941 again, 129 years later. Both invasions began successfully, but ended in catastrophic defeat due to harsh Russian winters. Napoleon was exiled to Elba. Hitler committed suicide in his bunker. While history doesn't repeat perfectly, the echoes between these two figures are impossible to ignore. Sometimes, coincidences are hidden in names, places, and timing. In 1883, the world's largest volcanic eruption occurred when Krakatoa exploded. The sound was heard over 3,000 miles away, and global temperatures dropped for years. What's strange is that Krakatoa translates roughly to loud noise. In ancient languages spoken in the region, almost as if the volcano had been named for its destiny. Then there's the strange case of Edgar Allan Poe. In 1849, Poe was found delirious on the streets of Baltimore, wearing someone else's clothes and muttering incoherently. He died days later, and the cause of his death remains unknown. What makes this bizarre is that Poe was discovered on Election Day, near a polling station. Possibly a victim of cooping, a practice where gangs kidnapped people, forced them to vote multiple times while changing clothes. Years earlier, Poe had written about characters suffering similar fates, life imitating art in its darkest form. Some coincidences stretch across generations, linking parents and children in disturbing ways. In 1944, a woman in Detroit gave birth to a baby boy named Joseph. Tragically, the child died days later. Years afterward, she had another son and named him Joseph. He grew up and was later found dead under mysterious circumstances on the same highway as his older brother, decades earlier. The mother had unknowingly lived through the same tragedy twice, bound by coincidence and grief. Then there's the tale of twins, separated at birth, a real psychological phenomenon filled with astonishing coincidences. In the 1970s, identical twins separated shortly after birth were reunited as adults. Both had been named James by their adoptive parents. Both married women named Linda, divorced, and remarried women named Betty. Both had sons named James Allen and James Allen. Both worked in law enforcement, enjoyed carpentry, smoked the same brand of cigarettes, and took vacations at the same beach. Scientists studied them, stunned by how nature and chance aligned so perfectly. History also has coincidences that appear almost poetic. Mark Twain was born in 1835, the same year Halley's Comet appeared. He famously predicted he would die when it returned. In 1910, Halley's Comet reappeared, and Mark Twain died the following day. A man whose life began and ended with the same celestial event. And sometimes, coincidences reveal themselves in moments of survival. During World War II, a man named Tsutomu Yamaguchi was in Hiroshima when the atomic bomb was dropped. He survived. 3 days later, he returned home to Nagasaki just in time to survive the second atomic bombing as well. He lived until 2010, officially recognized as a survivor of both nuclear attacks. Out of millions, one man stood at the epicenter of history twice and lived to tell the tale. Even literature seems haunted by coincidence. In 1837, author Edgar Allan Poe wrote the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym, describing shipwrecked sailors who resort to cannibalism, killing a cabin boy named Richard Parker. Decades later, in 1884, a real shipwreck occurred involving survivors who killed and ate a cabin boy named Richard Parker. The parallels were so disturbing that even the court documents referenced Poe's story. Coincidences don't always come with death. They can come with discovery. In the 1970s, archaeologists uncovered the ruins of Pompeii, frozen in time by volcanic ash. Among the remains were bodies found holding hands lovers who died together. Thousands of years later, modern scans revealed that many assumed relationships were wrong. Brothers holding hands, strangers clinging to one another in final moments. History reminding us that coincidence shapes interpretation as much as truth. Perhaps the most unsettling part of these stories isn't how strange they are, but how many of them exist. Across centuries, continents, and cultures, these coincidences stack up, daring us to explain them away. Are they mere statistical flukes, bound to happen given enough time? Or do they hint at patterns we don't yet understand? Does history follow invisible rhythms, echoing itself through people, places, and events? Maybe coincidence is simply our way of noticing patterns in chaos. Or maybe, just maybe, there's something deeper at work, threads, connecting moments across time, reminding us that reality is far stranger than fiction. Because when history repeats itself with perfect timing, when lives mirror one another across generations, when fiction predicts disaster, and when the universe aligns with impossible precision, one thing becomes clear. Some coincidences are too strange to ignore. And the most unsettling truth of all, history isn't finished yet.